that was really my first foray, I guess, in traveling by myself. And when you're out of your comfort zone, your gut instincts are really going to kick in big time, more than they would if you're in your comfort zone. Because, when you're doing your routine, you're in familiar places, around familiar people, you don't stay in tune with your instincts as much because you're used to that routine. You're in a safe space. But if you step out of it a little bit, all that anxiety, all those fears that you push past, you become more, I feel like naturally over time, you can become more in tune with your gut instincts, your intuition about what to do, not to do, what type of people to interact with, what type of people to not interact with.
Hello everyone, I am your host, Lion, and I want to remind you that fearlessness is not the absence of fear, and most fears are not rational. But how do we go about separating rational fears from irrational ones? Additionally, how do we realize which fears, as rational as they feel and seem, are truly irrational? That is where cultivating the power of our gut instinct comes in. Please join me as we learn from Alexis how she used travel to wake up more deeply to the voice of her gut instinct and her creativity in navigating the hurdles of adventure.
We're in part 2 of a 2-part miniseries, and ideally I would just like to say, hey, go and listen to the episode before this. But I'm going to give it my best effort to try to give you all a recap. So, in the last episode, we learned about Alexis and her coming into her own from somebody who was painfully shy and discovering her pent-up desire and longing to travel, to explore, to connect with people, and as part of that journey, she's gallivanted across the Middle East and gone camping and hiking all by herself, and she comes across as fearless to many. But as I like to remind myself, fearlessness is not the absence of fear. It is greater courage and perseverance in the face of that fear. And I say this because a lot of us have an explorer within us, and women are no different. However, there is quite a bit of fear conditioning that keeps a lot of women from manifesting their destiny as it relates to tapping into the explorer within them. And Alexis will tell you that she has a lot of female friends and relatives who express their admiration and say, I wish I could be more like you. And it is that unrequited desire from all these people, including women, that fuels us. So many of us have been, as a result of, sort of not having the courage to sort of explore the way Alexis is showing us how she is, have trained out of our gut instincts because of the society, the times that we live in. And it is the projection of the fears from our mind, our intellect, the thing that keeps us, wants to keep us safe, that sort of plagues us from being able to follow our dreams. And Alexis is a really, really good example of someone who recognized and cultivated the voice of her instinct. And we hope to present stories today from her journey to help share a guide on how more of us could start to tap into the voice of our instinct and start relying on that to better help, embark on adventures and exploration and making our dreams come true. So with that, Alexis, can you tell us the story of exploring in Venice and the encounter with the man who triggered your gut instinct that
Yeah, I think we left off where I had mentioned I had traveled with my group during the summer study abroad, and we were spent 6 weeks in Italy. And we ended up visiting Venice for 2-3 days, I believe. And most of the time, it was a group activities that we were doing. And then one of those days, it was kind of like, do whatever you want to do, stay, hang out in Sorrento where we were staying in a hotel, or, take the ferry back to Venice. And the two girls that were my roommates during the entire summer, basically, they wanted to chill, around Sorrento, and just, it was very hot during that summer too. I remember that. And they just wanted to chill, back at the hotel. It was cool. There was AC. I remember, in Italy, there wasn't really any AC anywhere. But the hotel we were in had it. So they wanted to just chill at the hotel because it was so hot that day. And I decided I was just going to take the ferry back across to Venice, and spend the day there. And I don't remember if I asked anyone to go with me. It was just kind of like, I guess I'm just going to have to do this on my own. And so I ended up, it was pretty easy just taking the ferry there. And I spent half a day in Venice. But when I was in, the famous, Piazza San Marco, where the Doge Palace is and everything, I was hanging out there. There were a lot of people in there, hanging around, just enjoying the scenery, feeding the pigeons. There's a ton of pigeons hanging around. And at one point, this guy came up to me and he just immediately started asking me questions like, what's your name? Oh, are you American? Where are you from? And everything. And his questions just got weirder, actually. I mean, he asked me at one point, was I with anyone? And then he asked me if I was Jewish. Just like, what? And so, this is the first time I'm traveling by myself ever. And even though I had these apprehensions, like, oh my God, what if I get completely lost? And even though, I'm in a high tourist area, there's a lot of English speakers around. People in general are friendly and, there. So I really didn't have, it was just my fears and anxieties about I shouldn't be doing this alone. But that, desire to want to explore more of Venice that day instead of just hanging back at the hotel overrode any fears and anxieties. But when I encountered, that man asking me those questions, those really odd, weird questions, my alarm bells went off, of course, even though I was in a public square where like hundreds and hundreds of people were hanging out, in broad daylight. I felt really unsafe. So I basically, in general, it's about your your comfort level, like how much you're willing to talk to a stranger, right? Because when you travel, especially as a woman, if you're traveling abroad, there are going to be people who are going to approach you, men and women, and they may ask you some questions because they generally are concerned. And then there are some people, who are not really concerned. They're just curious about you. And then there are people who, you just don't want to deal with. So I, didn't really answer his questions other than like, oh yeah, I'm with a group. They're right over here. And I just kind of walked away and I stood next to this group. I don't know where they were from, but I was just hanging next to them for about 20, 30 minutes, pretending I was with them. And I started striking up conversations with a couple of them. So I was hoping like, oh, I hope he sees me with this group and, he thinks I'm with them because he's freaking me out right now. So that was really my first experience traveling half a day by myself. Like just 3 weeks prior, I think I mentioned in the last episode, 3 weeks prior, like my first day arriving, I was crying my eyes out upon arriving because, I couldn't get a hold of my parents back home. It was my first time abroad and I couldn't get a damn phone to work to make an international call and all this stuff right there on the campus. And so people probably thought I was a little weird, like this girl just crying with a phone in her hand. But that was really my first foray, I guess, in traveling by myself. And when you're out of your comfort zone, your gut instincts are really going to kick in big time, more than they would if you're in your comfort zone. Because, when you're doing your routine, you're in familiar places, around familiar people, you don't stay in tune with your instincts as much because you're used to that routine. You're in a safe space. But if you step out of it a little bit, all that anxiety, all those fears that you push past, you become more, I feel like naturally over time, you can become more in tune with your gut instincts, your intuition about what to do, not to do, what type of people to interact with, what type of people to not interact with.
Oh, hell yeah. And there's so many examples of that. And, I think it would be so good to contrast, to better demonstrate to our audience how you have this one instance on one hand, but then if you could next tell us the story of how on a different occasion, also while in Italy, you lost your group, right?
Yeah, in
completely
another
separated
city.
from them in another city, and how you approached a group of guys, right? To help you. So help paint us that picture. Help us understand, your observations and what made you approach them, and the experience thus far.
Yeah, it was a medieval city that we were visiting, and the professor of ours basically had told us that we were going to spend 6 hours in the city, and that we were going to go as a group. But if anyone strayed or wanted to do their own thing or got lost, to meet back at the parking lot where the bus would show up at that time. So I forgot how it ended up. I think I'm the type of person when I travel, I'm constantly like, oh, look at this, look at that, and taking pictures and going up to pet a dog or a cat or something, or looking, window shopping and looking all of this. And, some people I've traveled with, they just walk and walk and walk, like they're trying to get from point A to point B on that vacation. But I'm just kind of like, oh, look at this. I'm going to check this out. Kitty. So that happened. I ended up, just straying away from the group because something else was catching my attention. And the next thing I know, I'm like, where is everybody? I don't recognize anybody in this crowd. And I remember this fear washing over me. I'm thinking, oh shit, what did the professor say? What time, meet back at the parking lot at X time. And I ended up just walking around trying to figure out where the parking lot was. And I briefly stopped, in one piazza to take a photo of this church. And, it's a tourist area too. And, I ended up approaching these three guys. They were Italian. They were from Italy, but they were also tourists. They were visiting the city. They were taking pictures nearby, and they seemed really laid back because they were joking with each other. I could tell, they were friends and all this stuff. And I approached them and I asked, of course, like, do you speak English? Can you tell me where this particular parking lot is? And they immediately told me, like, oh yeah, just go down this way, blah, 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 and you'll find it. No problem. And I'm like, okay, thank you so much. And, they actually started walking in that direction anyway. So I started walking with them, and they said, well, we're going in that direction anyway, so just come with us. And, I found out, they've been lifelong friends. They grew up in the same town in Italy, but they, as adults, they moved to different cities or towns. One of them was in the Italian Air Force, so he was on leave at that time. And I just started walking with them and just exploring the city as we made our way to the parking lot. And, when it comes to, as a woman, when you're traveling, to me, my mindset is, always think the best of people, but always be very cautious, right? So to me, it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or whoever, when I interact with you and I don't know who you are and I'm traveling and I'm by myself, I really pay attention to how my body is responding, and how this
Yeah.
person is making me feel and everything. And if I get any tingle at all, thinking, I think maybe I need to keep my distance or I need to cut this conversation short and go, I'm going to do that. Right. Um, and there's this, I think I mentioned it before, there's this, society really ingrains in young girls to don't cause a scene, always be nice, be the good girl. Um, and I really feel that, that's a detriment to girls and women, like to close yourself off and don't make a scene and don't do anything to upset other people. Even if you are uncomfortable, even if you're upset, don't make a scene. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as I've gotten older, I'm like, if I'm talking to someone and they're making me uncomfortable in any way, if my body is not feeling good in this moment, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to, nope, get on out. And I might say something like, oh, sorry, I have to go now, blah, 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 or I just leave. That's it. Like, I don't care how I come across because I don't know this person and they're making me uncomfortable. With these three guys, I didn't feel any bad feelings around them. They were very laid back and comfortable. And they were complete gentlemen. The thing with Italy is, boundaries there are very different. The way Italian men behave. Like I remember sitting in a restaurant with my group and the waiter just randomly came up and started playing with my hair and telling me how beautiful I was and playing with my hair. They'll go by on a scooter and catcall at you or like try to grab your arm or grab your butt where they're flying by on a scooter. It's just the boundaries. They don't know boundaries. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't. But these three did not make me feel uncomfortable in any way. They did not try to touch me in any way. They were very, very much gentlemen. And so I felt very comfortable with them. But like I said, when you're traveling and, you're solo traveling as a woman, you should always be prepared, right? Just in case. So if they had asked me to go down an alleyway, I would not have done it, right? Like a isolated alleyway. I would not have done that, right? But we just hung out in the tourist areas, walking towards the parking lot. We finally made it to the parking lot and there was my school group. So initially, just this overwhelming fear and anxiety came over me because I'd lost my group. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, how am I going to find? And this actually took place before, the Venice experience, right? When I actively chose to go travel by myself. So the initial fear and anxiety, like, oh my God, I'm lost. What am I going to do? But then by the end, I made it back safely. I paid attention to my surroundings and the people I interacted with, and everything. And it was an experience. I'll never forget that. Those three guys were so funny. They knew English pretty good. They were really funny guys. So they left an impression on me even to this day, 15 years later, like
Wow.
more than 15 years ago. Wow. Almost 20 years ago. Oh my God.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the important lessons for me that I take away is that there will be some scary moments along the
Mhm.
journey should you
Yeah.
decide to sort of step out of your comfort zone and go exploring. But ultimately that is life. Like even if you're super obsessed with safety,
Mhm.
right? And, curating this environment of safety around you in your comfort zone, there will still inadvertently be occasions in life
Mhm.
that will sort of um, give you scary moments to contend with. And really, the lesson that I'm being reminded of is that you know you can accept that and recognize
Mhm.
that that is life, and realize that I don't want to let it stop me from, my dreams, because ultimately the pros far outweigh the temporary, scariness, and then
Yeah.
having that opportunity to rely on yourself to figure it out, right? Because ultimately, all of that fear and anxiety was conditioned because you were just used to having that familiarity, and then you were just on your own. Um, but you discovered these amazing group of gentlemen who you remember to this day. Um,
Yeah.
so with that, uh, I'd love to hear the story of your panic episode, um, and feeling the need to cancel your 5-month trip in the Middle East that you painstakingly planned out, right?
Yeah.
Um, so help us understand the background there, and like what happened and how
Mhm.
you know, persevered through that.
Mm. So it was, I had been planning my last year, of college to do a study abroad on my own. And the thing was, I, my major, I had double majored. I went to University of South Carolina, and I had double majored in political science, with an emphasis on modern Middle Eastern politics. And then my other major was theater, and then my minor was Spanish, right?
Yeah.
But I was really interested, with political science, international studies, especially modern Middle Eastern politics. And my school at the time had just a couple of Arabic immersion classes.
Mm,
And by my senior year, they had finally created an Arabic language tract where you can actually minor in Arabic or major in Arabic. But by that point, I had 2 semesters left. So I'm like, if I decide to also minor in Arabic, I'm probably going to have to stay another year or 2 years. Like, screw that. I want to graduate now. So I don't know how I found out about it. I think I just did some research online or talked to, because at the time I was working part-time, a student job at, the English program for internationals at my university. So I met a lot of people from all over the world working in the office
mm,
there, students there, studying abroad and learning English while at the University of South Carolina. And a lot of them were native Arabic speakers. So, I talked to them a lot. I did some research online, and I found this, language school right on the border with Oman and UAE.
mm,
So I decided, you know what? Why don't I just study on my own, like study Arabic on my own instead of having to hold back graduation another year or two. And I get to travel. That's what I was thinking of. So I remember I was working a full time, basically I was working three part-time jobs while still doing a full load of classes my last year.
wow.
So it was almost like I was doing more than one full-time job along with a full load of classes. I was always tired, but I meticulously planned for months and months. Um, I was going to fly here and then go to the language school for a month, explore Oman a little bit. And then because of the friends I had made at University of South Carolina in my classes, in the groups I was part of at the EPI, the language program I worked part-time at, I made a lot of friends, from Oman, Egypt, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar. When I was in France, I befriended a girl who was from Qatar there. Her father was actually a diplomat, for the
Mm,
Qatari embassy in France. And she said, if you ever visit my home country, just let me know. I'd love to host you.
mm,
So I planned in advance, and, I took out school loan actually too, since it was like independent study. I was able to take out, school loans for that. And I remember a month before graduation, I was lying in bed and I was thinking about all of my plans and how I was going to execute each aspect of it. And it just hit me like, I don't know, a dump truck. My heart started racing and I started sweating and shaking in my bed because I was thinking, oh my God, in a month I'm graduating college and I'm going to be getting on a plane and flying overseas by myself. The first 10 days I joined a tour group. I was going to be with them for 10 days, 7 days in the UK, 3 days in France. But after that, I was flying on my own straight to Oman.
mm,
And then, explore for several months. And I just started panicking and shaking and crying in my bed by myself, like at midnight, and thinking to myself, I'm nuts. Because one thing too was during all of this, all these plans, you know, I was sharing with friends and family, and not a single family member or friend really supported me, you know, about doing that kind of trip. You know, this was also during this was during the 2000s, 2007, when I graduated from University of South Carolina. You know, with the Iraq war still going on and all that stuff happening. And then the media, watching the media, a lot of my friends and family who'd never been to the Middle East or anywhere, in those countries I'd planned to visit, you know, they had their own fears and anxieties, right? Some more extreme than others. And of course, the media doesn't help in regards to how it portrays other places, right? Not always accurately. And so, and, you know, I was dating someone at the time, and he basically told me, if you still go through with this, we should just break up, because you don't care about me. You don't care about your parents. You don't care about anybody, because you want to do this stupid trip to some dangerous countries. And I'm like, I'm going to Dubai. How is Dubai dangerous? Like, oh, it's not a war zone. Okay. It's like any other big city. You take precautions, you know, just be cautious when you travel to other places, but I'm not going to a war zone. Right. But people just had this heightened sense of fear and anxiety and basically just ignorance of these places I was going to visit. Like, one relative was thinking, he kept confusing India for being part of the Middle East. I remember that. So when I came back from my trip several months later, he's like, this girl went to India all by herself. I'm like, I didn't go to India. I didn't go anywhere near India. I was in Egypt and Oman. He's like, yeah, India. It's in the Middle East. I'm like, oh God. So I didn't have much support in these plans, right? Other than the friends who were from those countries and who you said, yeah, come visit. You can stay with me or stay with my family and everything. You know, my boyfriend at the time was making me feel bad and, you know, said, I'll break up with you. We ended up breaking up anyway. I basically said, like, let's just break up now then, because I'm not going to stop going on this trip. But that night I had a panic attack in my bed, because I'm thinking, am I nuts? Am I actually crazy? Like, planning this and everything. So I basically had an anxiety attack, and really considered just canceling everything. But I graduated and I just pushed through those fears and anxieties. I don't know how. If you ask me, how did you push through them? I really don't. I just thought, well, I planned all of this already. I paid the money. I might as well go. And I know people. I kept reassuring myself, like, I know people in some of those places I'm going to visit, and they're more than willing to host me. And I kept telling myself, I will be okay. I'll be okay. Just go, Alexis. Like, it's time to just get away for a little bit, reward yourself with something that, since you've worked so hard the last several years with college and work and everything. And that's what I wanted to do. And I did it.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'd love to, at this point, sort of, before we switch gears, talk about, one of the experiences, that was, part of your Middle East journey. And basically, I'd love to hear the story of, after a long and arduous, adventure, coming to Jordan, how you found yourself barricading yourself in your room because of an inappropriate front desk staff at the hotel you were staying.
Oh my God. Well, a little background of that.
Yeah.
I spent two weeks in Cairo, Egypt, right? And I actually was in Cairo during my birthday. I got to spend the whole day at the pyramids, exploring the pyramids on my birthday. I'll never forget that. I timed it just right. But I stayed with a friend's family who were very gracious, and hospitable, just absolutely most kind-hearted, generous people. They hosted me for 2 weeks, and his little brother actually showed me around Cairo. And then after those 2 weeks, I decided to take a bus from Cairo to this port city. I forgot the name of it, but it's a little bit further south. And you can take a ferry across, I believe it's the Dead Sea or Red Sea. I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart, but I wanted to get to Aqaba, Jordan, right? And instead of flying, a short flight, I wanted to take a bus to the port and then take a ferry across. That was my plan. It was also the first time I was going to be alone in Egypt, right? The 2 weeks I was there, Cairo is a very different animal, in regards to, big cities I've visited in the past, and everything. So I felt a little bit more safer having someone with me, people familiar with me, staying with a family. So I was nervous just hopping on a bus from Cairo and taking this 7-hour bus ride by myself. But it was a good trip. I remember I saw some beautiful scenery. I sat next to this old man who knew some English, and he gave me some of his lunch because I hadn't brought food with me. He kept giving me some of his food. He was talking about he was visiting family in another city. His son was in the Egyptian army and how proud he was of him and everything. And I made it to the port city, but the bus was 2 hours late. So I got stuck overnight in that port city, and I managed to make some friends there, like a couple from Jordan who were on their honeymoon, and they were leaving Egypt to go back to Jordan by ferry. These 3 Syrian gentlemen, the son who was about my age, his father and his father's elderly friend, they were visiting, I think, family in Egypt at the time, and they were going to go take a ferry back to Jordan and then take buses all the way back to Syria. And they kind of took me under their wing. I remember that, because I didn't know much Arabic. I was still practicing my Arabic. They barely knew English. I remember the Jordanian woman who was the, bride. She knew some good English though. And that was the first time, it was a gnarly experience. We got our tickets the next day after staying overnight in the port city. And we had to stay in a warehouse, this hot, awful warehouse, almost the whole day before the port authority, the port police, the Egyptian authorities started herding everyone to the buses to take us to the docks to hop on the ferries. And it was, I remember, wild. Like, people were getting upset and hot. When I was in Cairo, I could feel the tension. This was before, the Egyptian revolution happened. But I could feel the tension in the air in Cairo with how, regular Egyptians are treated by the police, by the military, by the people in charge. But I really witnessed the abuse, being in that port city. Watching the port police, they wouldn't touch us that had European or American passports, right? But they were physically violent with any Egyptians, with my Syrian friends, and all this stuff. Like, they were just abusive. Like, I saw a pregnant woman standing in line trying to get her passport stamp, like, shoved to the ground. And we ended up, at one point, I thought a riot was going to happen in the warehouse. But we managed to get safely onto the ferry finally. And I was with the Jordanian couple, a couple of other Jordanian guys who joined our group, these old men, and the Syrian guy, but his father and his father's friend, elderly friend, were not with us. And we realized that they had got stuck in the warehouse when all the chaos and, the near riot was happening. They got stuck. And so they would have to take the last ferry across, which wouldn't be until almost midnight. We finally got to the port. We finally crossed to Aqaba, and it was probably 10 p.m. at night. And I was so relieved to get away from Egypt. That was those 2 days, those 48 hours, going by myself by bus, trying to figure out where I was going to sleep on the docks or find like a crappy motel to sleep in the port city when I couldn't get tickets that night. Not being able to contact friends and family because the lack of internet access, I would have to go into internet cafes and everything. But made it to Aqaba. And of course I had to go through customs and deal with the port authority police, the Jordanian, port police.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was sticking with my Syrian friend because I felt safe with him. But his main concern at that point was his father and, his elderly friend,
Yeah.
and having to sit at the port and wait for them to come across. And I thought about staying with him, but I went from feeling like I almost got caught up in a riot on one side, on one port. And then in Jordan, the Port Authority police, the way they behaved with me, some of them was really inappropriate. Like one, he kept flirting with me and then he asked to see my passport. He kept looking at it and then he refused to give my passport back with me, which when I'm traveling, I keep my passport close to me like it's like a newborn baby. Like, I'm sorry, I will bite your nose off if you try to take my passport away from me now, right? But then I kind of froze. I just sat in my chair and I froze. Like, why won't he give my passport back? And I just kind of kept saying, can I have it back, please? I just need my passport, please, please. And he just kept flirting and kind of waving it in front of me. Oh, you want your he knew English. He's like, you want your passport back, huh? And he finally gave it back to me because I think he probably saw I was going to cry, right? So it was like, oh my God. And, you know, a couple of the port police, they had to inspect my luggage and all this stuff. And when they realized I was American, they were making comments about like, oh, you're an American girl traveling by yourself, so you think you can do anything, right? Like, that's just like Americans. And of course, this is 2007. And, you know, the height of the Iraq war going on. So, you know, Bush being in office, the United States reputation was at an all-time low. Like, it's been low, but at an all-time low. So I kind of understood like the jokes, like the digs that they were making because of my citizenship in a way, but it also made me very nervous being by myself and the fact that one of them didn't want to give my passport back. So I sat with my friend on the dock at one point thinking I should just stick with him for now, and everything, because I'm afraid to go through the Port Authority building again and try to find a taxi to get to my hotel, which I'd booked in advance, right? At an internet cafe. But then something in my head just kept telling me, you know, if these Port Authority police did want to do something, like part of me said, they're not going to do anything. But I'm like, if they did want to do something, my Syrian friend would not be able to protect me because he's not a citizen of Jordan, right? He's just passing through. And he, you know, was abused by the Egyptian police. He had bruises on him. And, you know, for him as a traveler, as a foreigner also, he would be unsafe. Like they would probably, if they wanted to do something to me, they would probably end up hurting him too. Right. Cause I remember at one point the Egyptian, authorities pulled him aside and started questioning him, asking why he was with me. Right. Cause we tried to walk through customs together. So I just had this voice in my head saying, what I need to do is hurry up through the building with my stuff, get a taxi, get to the hotel that I've already had booked because it's almost midnight. And just, you know, recalibrate and calm myself down because the last 48 hours has been somewhat of a nightmare, you know, just very intense for me. And I felt really bad, you know, leaving my friend. But we exchanged contact info and, you know, he was going to wait for the last ferry to come across with his father and his friend. But I'm like, I need to get out of here to feel safe again, because my body is not feeling good. To feel safe again, I need to remove myself from the situation, not just for my safety, you know, also. And I did. I left. I hopped in a taxi. I got to the hotel. They were completely fine with me checking in late. But then the guy at the front desk started flirting with me. And he asked if I wanted to have dinner with him. And I'm thinking, it's almost midnight. And who the hell has dinner at almost midnight? That was my first thought. And I said, and again, it was at that time where today, if someone said that, I'd, you know, have no problem like, oh, no, thank you. Or no, I'm not interested. But then it's like, you know, I don't want to come across as rude. Be nice. And I said like, oh, I'm really tired. I've had a long trip, blah, blah, blah. I want to sleep tonight. He's like, okay. I got to my hotel room, and then the phone rang as soon as I got in there, and I pick it up. It's the front desk, and it's him asking me, since I wasn't interested in having dinner, would I be interested in having breakfast with him tomorrow morning instead? And I'm like, oh my God, like, are you serious? Are you serious? So I said, okay. Let me think about it. I just need to sleep. And I ended up putting all my stuff down and putting like a couple of the room chairs against the door. Because at that point I was thinking, like, this guy is kind of aggressive. And he's at the front desk. I hope to God he doesn't have an extra key. And I just put like my luggage against the door, the chair and the small stool against the door, so that if anyone did try to come in, it would be making a lot of racket and it would wake me up, right?
Yeah.
That was my thought. I literally barricaded. I made sure the window, it was on the second floor. There was just like one window. I made sure the window was locked, and everything. If there'd been a fire, I probably would have like ended myself because I barricaded myself in my own room, right? I would have had trouble getting out. But at that point, my instincts kept telling me just to feel safe again, barricade your room and just relax. And I did. Like, I fell asleep that night. Before I did, I made calls. I had an international calling card thing. And I had at the time like a small mobile phone that you can make international calls on if you had the right SIM card. So I was able to call family, including my dad, because they basically had lost contact with me almost 48 hours. And I had missed my flight from Jordan back to Dubai because of the whole missing the ferry and then the chaos of trying to get across the next day to Jordan. So a lot of my friends and family were actually very concerned that I had gone incognito for almost 48 hours. But I got in touch with them, so they were relieved. And I said, I'm fine. I'm at this hotel. I plan on taking a bus the next day to Amman, the capital, and then figure out how to take the next flight to Jordan. Not Jordan, to Dubai. So,
Yeah.
but those 48 hours were probably the most intense, scariest experience during my time there. Those 5 months I was traveling, but I somehow navigated it, not just by following my instincts, but because of the people I met too, like the Jordanian couple and the Syrians who basically took me under their wing, and watched my luggage for me, and I would watch their luggage. And there was a language barrier, right? But when people encounter each other and they're both trying to get to the same destination, or they both have a common goal, even if there is a language barrier, you're able to communicate in different ways and be able to help each other. So that was definitely, in hindsight, some people would say that was a terrible experience, blah, 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 blah. I could never deal with that. And yeah, it was a scary experience, but at the same time, it's almost become part of like, who I am as a person, right? Like thinking I experienced this intense situation over 48 hours, feeling threatened that I was going to get caught up in a riot, feeling scared that like, I might get hit by the Port Authority police, men like making me feel uncomfortable and all this stuff, and men in authority making me feel that way and everything. So to me, it's all part of this phenomenal experience I had over a 4.5, almost 5 month experience. And I think making this decision to travel to the Middle East and visit Oman, Qatar, UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, Egypt, for those several months, navigating on my own, trying hard to understand the language and practice my Arabic, meeting different people, encountering friends, and then meeting new people and befriending them. It was the most eye-opening experience I've ever had. It was something that made me realize I am far more capable of handling stuff when shit happens than, I'm capable more than I even think I am, right? So that's why I think it's important. It's good to have routines. It's good to have routines and be comfortable and have your safe places. But I also think it's important to shake it up a bit and be willing to do stuff that does scare you a little bit, even if it's just a little bit scares you or gives you a little bit of anxiety. It could be something as simple as going out to a place and eating by yourself, right? Like there are people, I do it all the time, but there are people who are honestly actually terrified of, like, even in their own hometown, traveling to a restaurant, sitting or cafe, sitting by themselves and enjoying a lunch or dinner, right? To me, it's like, it's okay to have fears and anxieties. Those are natural, but don't let it hinder you from doing something that you may think you may even a little bit enjoy.
Yeah.
It may be a good experience for you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So let's switch gears a bit and come to your Pacific Northwest trip. 5
Oh,
months on the road, living in Silver Fox. So tell us the story of Silver Fox and your road warrior setup, how you slept in the car, and how the Facebook group for women who also, live out of their car, help cultivated your confidence and courage.
So the Silver Fox is the name of my Toyota Camry. I've had that car for 13 years. I want to drive it until the wheels fall off and then try to duct tape them back on if I can. But I named it the Silver Fox because my uncle, like, bless his soul, he died like 12 years ago. He called it the Silver Fox when I first bought it. But it's a great car, very comfortable. But I did. I've always loved road trips, right? I think I mentioned to you one time when we were talking that my mom, she was from Texas, but I grew up in South Carolina. And I remember we would travel whenever she would travel. She traveled frequently between Texas and South Carolina to see her family and everything. And so there was a lot of road trips and bus trips. We would go by bus. So some of my earliest experiences is of road trips, right? And I enjoy road trips. So while I was in Los Angeles last year, actually, I was helping some friends with a film project and catching up with friends as well. I was really stressed out because of the film project, and I decided to make a mini road trip up to San Francisco, one weekend, since I had nothing to do. I wanted to, I'm like, I got to get out of LA. So I spent that weekend in San Francisco to see some friends, and then I drove back down to LA, and I ended up taking the PCH. So I'd always wanted to take the PCH, and I came back to LA, and I don't know, something just kind of took me over, basically, where I'm thinking, you know what? I will be finished with this film project in a little bit, and I have the time, and I have a flexible job, and I can work remotely. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up spending 5 months on the road, and I visited a lot of national parks, cause I really had no set plan. And this group of friends, these people I met in Sequoia National Park, one of them, she loves national parks. She loves hiking a lot. She actually encouraged me, like, if you're going to go be on the road for several months exploring parts of the Western US, visit national parks. So basically I had a tent with me, an old tent that someone had given to me years ago. I had an old hiking pack and some old hiking boots, that I had bought years ago and I never had a chance to use, right? Except once or twice. And, I basically was either sleeping in the back of my car or sleeping in a tent in, national parks or campsites or, BLM land, federal land that people, can explore and also camp for free on instead of paying camping fees at official campsites. So, I ended up doing that and working remotely at the same time, working out of a lot of coffee shops, a lot of libraries, local public libraries, anywhere that had Wi-Fi and I had access to Wi-Fi. I would work my hours, and then when I wasn't working, like on weekends or late afternoons, I would be exploring as much as possible in the areas I was visiting. So, and the thing is, I'm short too. Like, I'm barely 5 feet. So my Toyota Camry has roomy space. So I recommend to anybody, if they're going to like car camp, I guess, or, have to stay in their car, to really assess if they can sleep comfortably in their car, right? But I had a nice layout. Like, I had privacy screens that I put up around my windows so no one can see inside when I would sleep. I, instead of buying like bedding, I just bought like a cheap pool floaty that you blow up. That was my sister's idea. And I just laid out in the back and laid my blankets over them and my pillows, and I was comfortable. I was very comfortable. So.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for that. Okay. So one of the stories that I'm super excited to hear about is the story of you hiking alone for the first time and then having complete breakdown afterwards in your car.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it was a breakdown. It was just kind of like my body just, I don't know, like being exhausted from the emotional, mental exertion of it. But, I was in Grand Teton National Park. It was probably, I'd already been to several national parks by that point. And like the national park system you can buy for a certain amount of money, a annual card, and you can get into all the parks instead of having to pay every time you go into a park, right? Like, I highly recommend anybody, if you get a chance, please go to national parks and explore your state parks, national forests, and national parks in your area or close by. Like that, it's just some of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And I've been to other countries, right? Like, but the US is just filled with, the continent is just filled with so much beauty. But, I decided when I was in Grand Teton that I wanted to do a little hiking trail on my own, because the day before I went hiking with this girl who was also, traveling by herself, and she was a hiking enthusiast. Mm-hmm. Like she was doing like, I think they're called 14ers. We do, hike up mountains that are 14,000. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not that intense. I still need to work on my stamina to get up to that much. But she asked me, do you want to do like a 7,000, height, 7,000 elevation height? I'm like, yeah, sure. And I nearly died, right? I didn't expect it to be that intense. But I decided after that day when we hiked, I'm like, you know what? I have a couple days left in Grand Teton. This area is beautiful. Let me see if I can find a hiking trail that I can do on my own. That's like, not going up. It's mostly flat, cause I know my stamina levels. So I took this one, I managed to look up some of the trails, park rangers are, they're so awesome and so friendly. They give you all the information you need. Like, you tell them exactly, I want to do this kind of hike, this much elevation, they could tell you, take this trail, it'll take this long, this is how, they know all of it. So reach out to your, national park ranger, right? Park ranger. If you need help on what to do when you arrive at a national park. But, I did a small hike that was maybe 2 miles round trip, right? And it went past this lake, and it was mostly flat elevation. My main, and I made sure too, because I'm hiking by myself, you got to take precautions. I would not really recommend hiking on your own. If you could go with a group or other people, do it. But again, I'm also of the mindset, if no one else wants to go with you or can't go with you, it shouldn't stop you from doing something, right? You just got to prepare as much as possible. Be aware of all the contingencies, be smart about it. And learn from other people who've done it, right? And also be aware that, anything could happen. You got to take that into account. My main fear, so I took a trail that was popular. So there was a lot of people on that trail anyway, right? I couldn't go a few hundred yards without someone, blowing past me, because I'm a slow hiker. I'm a slow hiker. And again, it's like I get distracted, like, ooh, look at this pretty plant. I just want to look at it like, oh my God, look at this. Like, some people are just point A, point B, and I'm just getting distracted by everything around me. So I didn't feel alone on the trail, right? This 2-mile loop trail. And also I tried to prepare. I had bear spray with me. I had bear bells with me. I had taken like a free class that a park ranger station gave to people to tell them how to prepare, in grizzly country and everything. And it was grizzly country I was in. So my biggest fear and anxiety was running into a freaking bear. Like, I wasn't scared of humans. I was
Your first
scared
hike
of
alone
bears.
in bear country, not just any bear country, but grizzly bear country. Please
Yeah,
continue.
yeah. And it was on a popular hiking trail. And I'm like, I have no one else to go with since the girl left town already and nearly killed me on this 7,000 feet hike. So let me just do it and prepare as much as possible. The hike took probably 5-6 hours max. And I remember when I got back to the parking lot and I put my hiking pack and took my hiking boots off and sat in the car, I just felt this wave of exhaustion just hit me. And I just collapsed in my, in the driver's seat. And I probably sat in the car, just zoned out for a couple of hours. I just sat in my car for a couple of hours, zoned out and just feeling depleted of energy. I was, crying a little bit. Like, I couldn't understand why I was crying. And then, like, it hit me thinking, oh, the entire time I was hiking, I was very, very anxious. It's weird. I was enjoying the hike, but everything was on high alert. Everything was on high alert. My body, my mind, my emotions and all this stuff. It's not always a good feeling, but I try to push past those bad feelings and try to look for stuff that I'm enjoying at the same time, right? Maybe it's like distracting yourself or something, or maybe it's a coping mechanism. I don't know. But, when you go hiking and you go camping and you really get out in nature, like, one thing I've learned is you really, really get in touch with your body. You really get in touch with your mental state and your emotions and your thoughts a lot. And with your environment, you become more aware of your environment. And it's almost meditative. I think it is meditative. It's a form of meditation when you go hiking, in places where, it's just you and nature and thinking of, how to plan something and preparing for anything that can happen. Right. And not a lot of people are comfortable with that, which is completely understandable. It's completely understandable. But again, I'm of the mindset of it's good to have habits and routines. Those help, those help you to have a good life, and keep the chaos out, and make you feel more, what's the word? It makes you feel safe and it makes you feel capable. But I also think it's important to take time to step out of your routine and step out of your comfort zone and find something that makes you a little bit nervous, makes you a little bit, even just a little bit anxious, and try to do it anyway, because it will help you to become more aware of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And it will definitely help you build way more confidence and more confidence to the point that you think to yourself, yeah, I think I can do a lot more than I've always thought I could do.
That's amazing. And what a wonderful note. So organically, you sort of summed up the entire objective of the show through your own life. And I'm so grateful for that. Alexis, thank you so much for embarking on this journey with me, with us, the audience, and sharing so profoundly, so openly, your journey. And I hope that, as I turn to the audience, that, whenever you're watching this, that Alexis's experience or words resonate deeply to sort of help inspire you, but then not just inspire you, but to help fuel your perseverance through your own fears and struggles to step out of your comfort zone and live that great life that you are capable of.
Nice.
And on that note,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would love to close, if that's okay with you, Alexis.
Yep.
All right. Well, audience members, till the next episode, I wish you love and light. Barheezy over and out.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Get Out of Your Comfort Zone series. I hope it moved you and inspired you if you are feeling stuck with something in your life. If you would like to further connect with our guest, please see their contact in the description. Please consider taking a moment to rate this podcast. Please also consider showing us some love on your Instagram story. You can find our info in the episode description. Until the next episode, I wish you infinite love and light. Thank you so much for tuning in.